Pro-L is FabFilter's take on what's now become a standard piece of mastering gear, the brick wall limiter. Now, I don't want to get into too much theory about this, but a little is in order. A standard limiter is just a compressor with a very high ratio, usually 10 or 20 to 1 or more. This can successfully contain typical transient peaks, like a rim shot or a hard slap bass note, preventing overloads. But at the final stage of mastering, a limiter is employed to guard against potential digital overloads, and that requires a more specialized tool. Regular limiters may still let a little signal through, but that can't be allowed if it'll cause digital clipping in the final bounce, so specialized brick wall limiters are utilized. In theory, a brick wall limiter has a ratio of infinity to 1. Nothing gets through above threshold, and so potential harsh digital clipping is successfully avoided. You could just put one on the output of a final mastered track, set its threshold just a hair below 0 dBFS, the maximum allowable digital output level, and you'd be good to go. But people realize that if you lowered the threshold further and then boosted the limited signal, you could achieve a higher average level for the track without clipping, and so the infamous loudness wars were born. That apparent loudness comes at the expense of transient impact, and there's a limit to how far you can push average levels before the track starts to sound overly squashed. A limit that's unfortunately exceeded fairly often these days, with brick wall limiters in the hands of anyone who fancies himself a mastering expert. But used properly, they can achieve loud levels comparable to commercial releases without negatively impacting the quality and punch of the mix, and that's where Pro-L comes in. Pro-L provides all the options for achieving good, punchy, loud masters, while avoiding excessive squash and loss of transient impact. But you do still have to be careful using it. It can overprocess a track, like any brick wall limiter, and it's up to the user to ensure that the results maintain the highest quality. Many brick wall limiters are extremely simple affairs. They often have just two controls, a combination threshold gain control and a maximum output setting. Pro-L has these too, of course. Now, if you just increase the gain of the channel fader, the signal would exceed 0 dBFS, the digital clipping point. While you may get away with that within the DAW, thanks to the extra headroom of 32-bit floating point resolution, any subsequent bounce will reveal digital clipping on other systems. Within Pro-L, as with any brick wall limiter, as you increase the gain slider, the limiting threshold is simultaneously being reduced by the same amount, so as the average level comes up, the transient peaks are being lopped off to protect the signal from overloads. You can see this pretty clearly in the real-time display to the right. Now, while you can keep cranking the level up and never have an overload, there's a limit to how far you can go, as I said, before the loss of transient impact negatively affects the mix. Usually you can apply about 6 dB of this level boost and transient reduction without there being a really noticeable difference in impact and punch. So if the transients in your mix are already up near 0 dBFS, then you can push average level to about 6 dB louder than it could otherwise go, and it should sound fine. Nowadays, levels are typically pushed a few dB higher than this, and while you can get away with it, you'll probably start to notice drum impact softening a bit, though this won't necessarily always sound bad. If you A/B the track against the original mix, compensating for the level increase, you'll get a good idea as to how much the mix is being altered. This kind of level-matched comparison is invaluable, and I'd always do it when applying this sort of limiting, especially if you're new to these tools. As I keep pushing the level up beyond +6, beyond +8 or +9, you can hear the track begin to sound overly squashed. The drums lose their snap, and the whole thing starts to sound bad. A track processed to this degree might initially seem loud and exciting, but listening fatigue will set in very quickly, and listeners will likely turn away. Exactly the opposite result than what all that loudness is supposed to achieve. So a gentle hand and a careful ear will make all the difference. Now, the other standard brick wall limiter control is the final output setting. In theory, you'd set this to 0 dBFS, maximum digital output level, but that's cutting it too close, so standard practice is to set the maximum output of the limited signal a few tenths of a dB less, anything from minus 0.1 to around minus 0.3 dBFS is common. I use minus 0.3. You might want to set this even a little lower if you really want to be cautious about avoiding digital overload. I'll come back to this when I look at the control that relates to intersample peaks. Remember, this is the maximum peak level. How loud the track actually sounds will depend on its average level, which you're setting with the gain slider. Besides the real-time level display, the meters on the right let you see both average and peak level, as well as gain reduction. You can set different scales for more detail on the upper levels. If there isn't enough difference between average levels and peaks, the track may lack musical dynamics, impact, and punch, even if it doesn't sound obviously squashed. As you can see, with the 9 dB of boost I've dialed up, this track has a peak to average distance of about 12 dB. This is pushing it pretty hard. Any more and this mix starts to suffer, at least to my ears. If you wanted a more dynamic, punchy quality, you could set the level so this difference was around 20 dB instead. The average level would be lower than typical commercial tracks, but the mix would have a lot more snap. If you want to get an idea of the peak to average difference of the original track, just pull the gain slider back down to 0. In this mix, taking into account the lower peak level, you can see that the difference is about 15 to 20 dB, and I know that the drum peaks in this song had already been limited by about 6 dB in the mix. Masters for different musical genres may go for different average levels. The K system, from mastering guru Bob Katz, defines 3 standards for average levels: minus 12, minus 14, and minus 20. Minus 12 is supposed to be for broadcast applications, but many recordings are mastered at this and even higher average levels, unfortunately. Minus 14 is earmarked as the standard for most pop music recordings, and minus 20, with its noticeably lower overall level, is for classical music and more purist recordings. Pro L incorporates K-metering as a guide, should you choose to adopt those recommendations. Now, with many brick wall limiters, this is all you get, and all you need, but Pro L has a number of additional controls which you can choose to employ if you want to push for both hot masters and maximum quality. I'll go through those in the next clip.